During the Second World War, the city of Melbourne, Australia, was subjected to nightly brownouts. These were not as stringent as the blackouts imposed on British cities as a precaution against bombing raids, but they did mean that the streetlights were dimmed, throwing the city into a murky twilight. Over a period of 15 terrifying days in May 1948, a killer stalked this eerie half-light, attacking several women and leaving 3 of them strangled to death. His name was Edward Joseph LEONSKI. Edward LEONSKI was born on December 12, 1917 at Kenville, New Jersey, the 6th child of Russian immigrants. A few years after his birth, the family relocated to New York City, where Edward spent his formative years. Edward's childhood was not a happy one. His father was an abusive alcoholic, his mother mentally unstable and confined to an institution on several occasions. One of Edward's brothers was also diagnosed with psychiatric problems, while 2 other brothers were serving prison terms by their teens. Notwithstanding the turmoil going on around him, Edward was a bright boy who did well in school. Graduating in 1933, he took a business course and finished in the top 10% of his class. Thereafter, he found employment as a clerk with Gristede Brothers Superior Food Markets, and was still working there when he was called up for military service in February 1941. LEONSKI was assigned to the 52nd Signal Battalion at San Antonio, Texas. Military life seemed to bring out another side of him. He began to drink heavily and became somewhat of a braggart who enjoyed demonstrating his strength. One of his favourite tricks was to walk along a bar counter on his hands. He also gave a more sinister demonstration of his physical prowess while stationed in Texas. He was accused of trying to strangle a woman. Unfortunately, the military authorities failed to appreciate the seriousness of the offence. They put it down to drunken mischief, gave LEONSKI a reprimand and shipped him off to Australia. 3 Australian women would pay a heavy price for their leniency. Arriving in Melbourne in February 1942, LEONSKI quickly picked up where he'd left off in Texas, embarking on nightly drinking binges before staggering back to his barracks at Camp Pearl in the early morning hours. He'd been in Australia only a few weeks when a woman accused him of trying to rape her in her St Kilda flat. Again, the authorities failed to realise the seriousness of the situation. They sentenced LEONSKI to 30 days in the stockade. A month later, he was back on the bar circuit, drinking himself into a stupor and harassing women. It was only a matter of time before that harassment went too far. On May 30th, 1942, a 40-year-old woman named Ivy Violet McLeod was found dead in the doorway of a shop near the Bleak House Hotel, Albert Park. She had been beaten and strangled to death, leaving the police baffled as to the motive. Her purse was found untouched in her possession, ruling out robbery, and although her skirt had been lifted above her waist, there was no evidence of sexual assault. Detectives were still puzzling over the murder 6 days later, when another strangled woman turned up. Pauline Thompson, 31, had been drinking at a local bar the previous evening in the company of a young man with an American accent. The police believed that the American might be one of the GIs stationed at Camp Pearl, but not wanting to offend the wartime authorities, they didn't pursue that line of inquiry too vigorously. Then, on May 18th, another woman was dead. Gladys Hosking, 40, had been out for a late-night stroll. She was found on a muddy footpath close to Melbourne University. As with the other 2 victims, her skirt had been raised to reveal her underwear, although she hadn't been raped. This time, though, there was a witness. A local man contacted the police to say that on the night of the murder, he'd been approached by a dishevelled and obviously inebriated American GI, who'd asked him for directions. The soldier's uniform had been covered in mud, he said. The police were extremely interested in this witness's statement, especially as his description of the soldier matched that of the man who was seen with Pauline Thompson on the night she was killed. It also tallied with the descriptions given by a number of women who had survived recent attacks. A lineup of American servicemen was arranged, with several women picking out LEONSKI as the man who had assaulted them. When the witness to the Hosking murder also picked him out, LEONSKI was arrested. LEONSKI immediately confessed to the killings, offering a bizarre motive. He said that he'd killed because he was fascinated by the female voice. "That's why I choked those ladies," he said. "It was to get their voices." Whether or not the motive was designed to pursue an insanity defense, it didn't work. Found guilty by a military court-martial on July 17, 1942, LEONSKI was sentenced to death. General Douglas MacArthur personally signed the order of execution on November 4, 1942. Edward LEONSKI went to the gallows at Pentridge Prison a week later on November 9th, becoming only the second American serviceman to be executed during World War II.